How are we going to do this? How are we going to master the major scale without dealing with all the scale patterns and all the confusing things that take a long time to learn? How are we going to figure this out? What we're going to do is we're going to do a little Yoda. We're going to unlearn what we have learned. Let me ask you a question. What do you see when you imagine a major scale? Just think about that for a second. Some people would think of a scale chart or positions, the typical things that you find when you type that into Google. Some people think of the major scale as the piano keys, which is a good way to think. It's all laid out nicely, much easier than the guitar does. But I want to show you something. I want to show you how I picture the major scale. Here it is. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, or WWH, WWWH. When I think of a major scale, that's what I think of. What does that mean? Well, whole step means 2 frets. Half step means 1 fret. So what is this? It's the spaces between the notes. It's not the notes themselves. You see, the keys can change. You can play in D, play in G. It doesn't matter. But do you ever notice that things sound super similar, even if they're not in the same key? The sounds stay the same. Think of this as a formula rather than that scale that's not the cool kid in class. Think of it as E equals MC whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. This is a gift for you. This is a gift from the governor at the last minute. It's your key to get out of the rut that you've been in for so long. It's a formula that I use to get what I want in music. It's really a tool. And once you understand the major scale, you start to progress, and your progress speeds up exponentially. And that's what I want for you. Chords, scales, modes, harmony, melody, it all boils down to this formula. Everything that we look at in music, it's either a different use of that formula or it's slightly changing that formula to get different sounds. It's very interesting. Sometimes we go down the wrong path. We learn things out of step, or we're guided in a different direction. You think you're doing the right thing. You're working hard at it. You're confident while you're doing it, and then the results don't come. And then you realize, hey, maybe I might have wasted a lot of time. Think of it this way. You start to learn scales and patterns are put in front of your face. We learn a scale pattern. We play that pattern. We go up and down. And basically, after a little bit of time, we start to feel bad. We start to feel very bad. Why is that? We don't want to sound like we're playing scales. We want to sound like we're playing cool licks. We want to sound like we're playing cool melodies, things that move people, things that people think are cool. So by having those scale patterns thrown at you, yes, you're doing something. Yes, you're getting those sounds, but you're not dealing with the way they're used correctly. When you learn to read, do they throw paragraphs at you? No, they don't throw paragraphs at you. You start with at, two letter words. You learn those words and then you put them together in small phrases, then eventually to small sentences, then to bigger sentences. Then you start putting sentences together. You start small, and as you start to put those things, you get more difficult as you can handle it. I think that giving people who have no idea how to use the scale and giving them all of the scale patterns is a little like asking someone to make a paragraph when they don't really know how to spell a word. So when we talk about this, the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, we're talking about distances between a collection of notes. So a major scale is really just a collection of notes, and we separate them. The formula separates them in a way that gives them a group identity. They have a sound when we separate them with these distances. This is the beginning of understanding something very important. Intervals, distances between notes that have a certain quality. You hear it all the time. You just may not know that you're using it. These are your colors. This is your painter's palette, intervals. And as we separate all these notes in the major scale, each one is an interval between each other and in relationship to all the other ones. They have different sounds. So what we're going to do is instead of learning a scale pattern, we're going to take the formula whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and we're going to use it on one string and build this scale. We're in the key of D today. Okay, so I'm going to start on the 3rd fret on the B string. That's a D note. We're going to go a whole step. That's 2 frets away. And we've got our E, and then another whole step. It gives us an F sharp. You know, in the beginning, you don't want to play sharps and flats. You don't want to worry about that. But this formula puts the right ones in where you need it. Now we're going to go half step to G, a whole step to A, another whole step to B, another whole step to C sharp, and then a whole half step to D. And we're going to give them a number. 1, 2, 3, 4. On 4 is where our half step is. 5, 6, 7, and 7 going back to our root note, our tonic note, is a half step right there. So very familiar. Go ahead, do that now. One string, make your major scale. When you discover something on your own like this, instead of me telling you exactly how to do it, I give you a starting point and a formula, and then you find the notes right here. When you do that on your own, it tends to stick in your mind. It becomes very solid. You're not just duplicating what someone asked you to do, and like tab, you know, just like a player piano, do this exactly right. You're having to figure things out. It sticks better in the memory that way. It's a great way to get started. Okay, so now we have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, which is the octave, which is the same as 1. And we have our whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step in between each one. This formula is starting to work, and now we're in the key of D. I'm going to start to show you something that I'm going to take this formula and start to make some licks with it. Okay, so we're going to play over the D chord for 2 measures, and then the G chord for 2 measures. I put this track on, and I came up with something I thought sounded pretty cool. So next time it goes around, I'll play you what I came up with. 2, ready, go. Okay, so up and down the string, we had 8. We'll take a look at this tab right here. What I did to make it sound cool with that is I used some drone notes, a D drone note over the D chord, and then a G drone note over the G chord, just the root notes of the chords. Really not a big thing, but here it is all on one string. 8, 10, 7 on the B string, and then we have 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 10th fret, and then we finish off with 7th fret, 12th fret, 10th fret. All these are on the B string. These are all the notes that we figured out. Nice melody. It sounds great with those chords. It's a lot of fun. So what I did was I said, okay, now that I can do that, that's a lot of jumping around on the guitar. I'm going to figure out how to play those in one place. I took a look at each of the notes that I've played on the single string, and I challenged myself to find them in one position where I didn't have to move my hand around so much. It was a great challenge. Turned out where I did them is in pattern 2. By doing that, by challenging myself, it was a great way to be introduced to where these notes sit in the patterns in a way that I'm going to remember. Oh, that's when I took my whole, half, and figured out where all those notes sit in a certain place. Here is the melody played in that position. 12th fret on G, 10 on the B, 11 on the G string. And then we're going to play 11, 12 on the D string. up to the 10th fret on the B, and then 11th on the G, and then 12th on the B to 10th on the B. How about that? So I took the notes on one string. I challenged myself to play those same notes in a certain pattern, really building some strong pathways in the brain to remember these kind of things. And then I thought, well, that's great if I'm a lead guitar player, if that's what I want to do. But what if I didn't care about that? What if I just wanted to play rhythm? How could I have this work for me too? So I thought, how can I do something similar with rhythm guitar? Take the ideas from going up and down the B string with my whole, half, whole, half, those ideas that I used, and maybe make a cool rhythm part out of it. So the key of the song is D, and the two chords are D and G. So the first notes in the lick, G, A, and F sharp. I'm going to concentrate on the G going to the F sharp there. I'm going to leave the A out, but I can do that right in position with a suspended chord. Here I'm getting the essence of that sound from that melody. And then when I go to the G chord, we were hitting the 2nd fret on the B string. That's a C sharp. Well, I'm going to start with that. And I climbed as I'm playing the G chord. So it's C sharp, D, F sharp, G. So the whole thing together. So there's a rhythm part that sounds a lot like what I came up with on the one string. I took the ideas from it. So here I'm going to play that rhythm part over the song here. Let's see what it sounds like. So what I'm hoping that you take from today's podcast is that we boiled down a difficult problem that doesn't sound good into something simple. And it was easy to get something that sounded great, that really worked over the chords. I wasn't worrying about what pattern I was playing. I wasn't overwhelming myself with whether I was playing it right and all those kind of things. I was just going up and down, whole, half, whole, half, freed my mind up to be able to make music, came up with something simple that sounded good. And then I could go around the guitar and make it more difficult, put it in different places. But that musical idea was there first by keeping things simple. Thank you for joining me today for the Play Guitar podcast. Make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. And if you have benefited from this podcast, please leave a favorable Apple Podcast or iTunes review. It's the best way to make sure we get this valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And if more help, structure, and results in your playing sound good to you, join me over at the Academy. You can get part 2 of this lesson, and it's the most exciting, carefully planned guitar system. Together, we will build our online home base for guitar together. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next episode.